Carlos Herrera walked into Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant wearing a $50 jacket and shoes worn from honest work. His sister said it was a blind date with a career woman, but when he saw Isabel Mendoza at table 12, he knew he'd been set up. Isabel Mendoza, the richest woman in America, $3 billion empire. She looked him up and down, took in the cheap jacket, the old shoes, the hands that smelled like motor oil despite the shower. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and she told him that table was reserved for people of her caliber. The silence that followed was absolute. Neighboring tables stopped eating. Waiters froze mid-step. Everyone waited to see what this poor mechanic would do when the most powerful woman in America told him he didn't belong. Carlos looked at her. Then he pulled back the chair, sat down, and said 5 words that changed everything. This table is mine now. What happened next wasn't just a love story. It was a billionaire learning what real wealth means from a mechanic and his 8-year-old daughter, who knows how to fix broken cars and broken hearts. It was a November night when Carlos Herrera, a 35-year-old mechanic with grease-stained hands and the pride of someone who works honestly, entered the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan to what he believed was a blind date. His sister had organized a meeting with a career woman, but when he saw Isabel Mendoza sitting at table number 12, the richest woman in America, owner of a financial empire worth $3 billion, he understood he had been deceived. She looked him up and down, noticed his $50 jacket and worn shoes, and with a smile of superiority made him understand that table was reserved for people of her caliber. Carlos looked her directly in the eyes, slowly sat down in the chair in front of her, and responded with a calm that froze the air. In that moment, the most powerful woman in America was about to discover there existed a type of wealth her millions couldn't buy. Carlos Herrera turned off the engine of his 2010 Honda Civic in front of the Black Pearl restaurant, the most exclusive address in the Upper East Side. His hands still smelled of motor oil despite the quick shower, and the navy blue jacket he had bought 5 years ago for a cousin's wedding was the only elegant garment in his closet. His sister Carmen had brainwashed him for weeks. An intelligent career woman who needed someone like him. She hadn't specified other details, only that her name was Isabel, and he would recognize her by the white suit. The maitre d' looked at him with distrust when he said he had a reservation at table 12. Carlos saw him consult the list twice before accompanying him, clearly upset about having to attend someone who didn't belong to that environment. Table 12 was in a privileged position with a view of the illuminated gardens, and there, seated with royal bearing, was her, Isabel Mendoza, although Carlos didn't know it yet, was the face that appeared on the covers of Forbes America, the heiress of a financial empire that controlled banks, real estate, and investments throughout North America. She was 33 years old, blonde hair gathered in a perfect bun, and wore a white suit that cost more than Carlos earned in 6 months. Every movement was studied, every gesture calculated. She was checking her phone when Carlos approached. When he introduced himself, she looked up and her expression changed immediately. Her glacial blue eyes did a complete scan, from the clean but old sneakers to the jeans that, although they were the best he had, weren't designer, to the jacket that screamed cheap purchase from every seam. With a smile that didn't reach her eyes, Isabel made him understand there had been a misunderstanding. That table was reserved for people of her caliber. The silence that followed was loaded with tension. Neighboring tables began to pay attention. Waiters slowed their pace to listen. Carlos remained motionless for a moment, processing those words. Then, with a calm that surprised even himself, he pulled back the chair and sat down. "This table is mine now," he said, looking her directly in the eyes. Isabel was left speechless. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She was accustomed to deference, respect, fear. But this man, with calloused hands and honest eyes, was challenging her on her own territory. Carlos introduced himself with disarming simplicity. 35 years old, an 8-year-old daughter named Lucy, and he ran the most honest auto repair shop in Queens. He had never read Forbes, didn't know how to distinguish Armani from Zara, and the last time he had been in such an elegant place was for his uncle's funeral. But he had recognized something in her that probably no one had had the courage to tell her, that she was alone, completely, painfully alone, and that all that wealth, all that power, didn't warm her heart when she returned home at night. Isabel felt something move in her chest. How did this stranger manage to see through the armor she had built over years of battles in the business world? Carlos continued with a calm voice. He had been alone for 3 years, since his wife had died in an accident, and he recognized the look of loneliness when it tried to hide behind success. The restaurant seemed to have disappeared around them. Isabel looked at this man who had dared to challenge her world and felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine curiosity about a human being. When she asked him why she should waste time with someone like him, Carlos smiled. He was the only person in that restaurant who wasn't afraid of her, and despite all her money, he was probably the only one there who could afford to pay his own bill without wondering if it was worth it. It was a sweet lie. Carlos had checked the prices online and was terrified, but he said it with such confidence that Isabel couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, Isabel Mendoza found herself not knowing what to say, and strangely, it didn't bother her at all. The waiter approached the table with the respectful walk reserved for important clients, but his eyes betrayed confusion. Isabel Mendoza was dining with a man who clearly didn't belong to that world. Before she could order her usual, Carlos interrupted. He ordered the most economical wine list and 2 daily specials, what the employees eat in the kitchen. The waiter looked at Isabel as if he had just witnessed blasphemy in church. She, after a moment of hesitation, nodded. The man walked away, shaking his head. Carlos explained he wanted to see who she was when she wasn't acting. The best food he had tasted had been cooked with his daughter in a kitchen with a leaking gas stove. When Isabel asked him to talk about his daughter, Carlos's face immediately lit up. Lucy was 8 years old and believed he was the strongest man in the world because he could change tires by himself. Every afternoon she helped him at the shop, although what she did was more hindrance than help. Her mother had died 3 years ago in a car accident. One night, Lucy had asked him if Mommy had become a star, and he had told her yes. Now, every night before sleeping, she waved to the brightest star she saw from the window. Isabel felt something move in her chest. When was the last time someone had spoken to her with such vulnerability? When Carlos asked her when was the last time she had done something just because she liked it, Isabel remained silent so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "I don't remember," she finally whispered. Carlos asked her what she liked to do as a child. "Paint," she responded immediately. She was 10 years old when her father told her it was a waste of time. She hadn't touched a brush again. Carlos looked at her with sadness. Her father had left her an empire worth $3 billion, but had robbed her of the joy of creating something with her hands. It hadn't been a good deal. Isabel laughed, but it was a sound without joy. Carlos said that the next day she should buy paints and paint. Not to sell, not to impress anyone, just because she liked it. When Isabel protested talking about meetings and responsibilities, Carlos gently stopped her. When was the last time she had made a decision for herself, not for the company? She looked at him, and for a moment her mask of control slipped completely. Carlos saw the woman beneath the armor, scared, tired, incredibly alone. Carlos stood up and extended his hand. They should leave that place and go for a walk. No bodyguards, no agenda, no reason other than to walk. Isabel looked at his calloused hand. In that hand was an offer of something she had forgotten existed: spontaneity, freedom, humanity. For the first time in years, the idea of being invisible seemed incredibly attractive to her. Isabel took his hand. Manhattan at night had a different charm when you looked at it from the sidewalk instead of from the window of a Maserati. Isabel walked beside Carlos through the streets of Central Park, her high heels replaced by the flats she always carried in her purse for emergencies. She didn't remember the last time she had walked more than 5 minutes straight. Carlos told her he walked to work every day, 20 minutes there and 20 back. The time to talk about the world with Lucy. The day before, his daughter had asked him why stars only shine at night. He had explained they shine always, but during the day the sun is so strong we can't see them. Lucy had remained quiet for 10 minutes. Then she had told him that people are like that too. They shine always, but sometimes the world is too loud to notice. They entered a small diner, a simple place with formica tables and mismatched chairs. The owner, Joe, recognized Carlos immediately and asked about Lucy. He served 2 coffees without anyone ordering them. Then he noticed Isabel. His eyes opened slightly. He had recognized her too, but only said it was the first time he'd seen her around there. Carlos explained it was his neighborhood. Joe had raised 3 children with money from the shop. Luis the baker always brought him leftover croissants for Lucy. Mrs. Anna from the fruit stand always gave him something good. It was like an extended family. Isabel repeated the word family as if testing something new. She didn't know what it meant. Carlos explained it meant having people who care about you without wanting anything in return, being able to count on someone, even when you have nothing to offer. Isabel drank the coffee in silence. It was strong, bitter, perfect, nothing like the espresso from her office. She asked him if he had never wanted more. Had he never dreamed of being rich, powerful, important? Carlos thought about it seriously. When he was young, yes, he dreamed of being a Formula One driver, having fast cars and beautiful women. Then he met his wife. Lucy was born, and he understood he already had everything he wanted. After his wife's death, he understood that wealth isn't what you have, but what you can't lose. He couldn't lose Lucy's love, his customers' trust, respect for himself. That was his wealth. Isabel felt her eyes fill with tears. She could lose everything. If the company sank, if investments went bad, everything disappeared, and she had no one who would love her if she had nothing. Carlos took her hand across the table. That wasn't true. She asked him how he knew. Because that night she had let him see who she really was, the real person. And that person didn't need money to be valuable. They remained in silence, hands joined over the formica table. Isabel looked at Carlos's hands, strong, honest, marked by work. Her perfect, cared-for hands, never dirty from anything but contract ink. When they left the diner, Isabel realized 3 hours had passed without her looking at her phone even once. 3 hours in which she hadn't thought about work, investments, responsibilities. 3 hours in which she had simply been a person. As they approached where she had parked, Isabel thanked him for making her remember who she was. Beneath everything else, Carlos told her she didn't have to thank him. She just had to promise not to forget it again. Isabel asked him what to do if she couldn't do it alone. Carlos stepped closer. Then call a mechanic. They're good at fixing broken things. She laughed. And for the first time in years, it was a sound full of true joy. She asked if she could see him again. Carlos told her that Lucy and he were always at the shop. Queens, Mill Street, 47. The door was always open for friends. As Isabel got into her Maserati, she rolled down the window and called to him. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue with the video. She told him that the next day she would buy the paints. Carlos smiled and reminded her it didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be hers. As he watched her drive away, Carlos knew something had changed that night, not just for Isabel, but also for him. For the first time since his wife had died, he had felt his heart race again for a woman. 3 days later, Isabel finally found the courage to park in front of Herrera Auto Shop. It was a Thursday afternoon. She had canceled an important meeting with the excuse of a family emergency. The shop was exactly as she had imagined it, small, orderly, full of tools she didn't even know how to name. Carlos was bent over a red Fiat, completely concentrated, and hadn't heard her enter. A little voice from the corner shouted that there was an elegant lady. Isabel turned and saw Lucy, brown hair in 2 braids, flower dress stained with oil, big curious eyes studying her without shyness. She had a small toy hammer in her hand and wore miniature work overalls. Carlos looked up, surprised but happy to see her. He didn't think she would really come. Isabel explained she had promised a certain young lady she would let herself be taught to see the stars. Lucy looked at her with renewed interest. Was this the one who wanted to learn? Papa had told her she didn't know how to look at the sky. When Isabel confirmed she was very good at looking at numbers on papers but bad with stars, Lucy approached to study her better. She observed she had shiny shoes and smelled like flowers. She liked her. Lucy showed her her little mini workshop, a low bench, plastic tools, and 3 toy cars in various states of repair. She had named the cars Red, Blue, and Yellow, each with their specific problems. Isabel knelt beside her without caring about the white suit. Lucy explained with seriousness that the secret was listening to what the cars said. They had their own language made of noises. If they went grrr, they were angry. If they went puff puff, they were tired. If they went click click, they were scared. Papa had told her people did that too, but they were harder to understand than cars. When Isabel asked if she cried sometimes, Lucy responded with disarming wisdom. Maybe she hadn't loved someone very strong yet, but she could learn. Love was like driving a car. At first it's scary, then it becomes the most beautiful thing in the world. During the next half hour, Isabel found herself sitting on the floor of a shop, getting her clothes dirty and learning the difference between a toy wrench and a plastic screwdriver. Lucy was a patient teacher, explaining each step with professional seriousness. When it was time to leave, Lucy asked if she would come back the next day. Isabel said she worked a lot, but Lucy responded that Papa said work is important, but people are more important. She asked if she had important people. Isabel looked at this 8-year-old girl who was asking her the deepest questions she had ever heard and responded that she was starting to understand what it meant. Lucy gave her a spontaneous hug and told her that tonight she would look at the stars for her so she could get used to it. As Isabel drove home, she realized she had 3 oil stains on her suit, dirty nails, and disheveled hair, and that she had never felt more beautiful in her life. That night, for the first time in her memory, Isabel dined alone looking out the window instead of reading financial reports. And when she saw the first star appear in the Manhattan sky, she smiled, thinking of an 8-year-old girl who knew how to repair cars and hearts with the same ease. 2 weeks later, Isabel had developed a routine that would have surprised anyone who knew her. Every Tuesday and Thursday after work, she stopped by Herrera Auto Shop, officially to supervise an investment in the automotive sector, actually to help Lucy with homework and listen to Carlos talk about everything except money. She had also started painting small canvases she hid in her office closet, simple landscapes she painted at night instead of reading balance sheets. They weren't masterpieces, but they were hers. One Thursday night, while Lucy was teaching her how to diagnose a problem with a toy car, a call came that changed everything. It was her assistant. There was a problem with the Martinez acquisition. They had discovered her frequenting the auto shop, photos on social media. Someone had recognized her. The Martinez family thought she was losing professional credibility. The Martinez acquisition was worth $500 million, months of work, dozens of people involved, the biggest deal of the year. As she prepared to go to the office, Lucy asked in a small voice if she had to leave. When she confirmed it was important, the girl asked if it was more important than them. Isabel said it was complicated. Carlos intervened calmly. It wasn't complicated. Either people were important or they weren't. Either she was there because she wanted to be or because she was bored. Isabel protested, saying they were the best thing that had happened to her in years. But Carlos stopped her. When was the last time a decision of hers had made someone happy? Truly happy? Lucy took her hand and asked if by leaving, she would come back. Isabel answered honestly that she didn't know. The girl nodded gravely and said goodbye, hoping her papers were more important than the stars. Isabel spent the night saving a business that suddenly seemed empty of meaning. She managed to convince the Martinez family, signed the contracts at dawn, and found herself $500 million richer and infinitely poorer. For 3 days, she didn't go to the shop. She returned to her old life. Meetings, business dinners, decisions that moved millions but didn't touch souls. On the 4th day, Lucy showed up at her office. She crossed reception in her work overalls, ignoring the secretary's protests. She entered the 65th floor office and sat in the chair in front of Isabel's desk. When Isabel asked how she had gotten there, Lucy responded naturally that she had taken the bus and then the elevator. Papa didn't know she was there. He was sad since she stopped coming. Lucy told her she was sad too. She could see it. She had gone back to making the noise from when she was sad. Isabel asked, "What noise?" "Like cars when they're scared." Click, click in the chest. Lucy got up and went around the desk, climbing onto Isabel's chair and looking out the window. She observed that from up there you couldn't see any stars. Too much light. How did she manage to remember who she was if she couldn't see the stars? Isabel looked at this 8-year-old girl who had just asked the deepest question she had ever heard. She asked if she would know how to be happy with simple things. Lucy looked at her as if she had said the stupidest thing in the world. You learn like driving a car. At first it's scary, then it becomes beautiful. And what if she messed everything up? Lucy responded that mistakes are fixed like cars. You just have to know where to look. In that moment, Isabel understood she had to make the most important decision of her life. She could stay in her ivory tower, rich, powerful, and alone. Or she could come down, get her hands dirty, and discover what it really meant to be alive. She asked if she wanted to come with her to buy new paints, the ones that glow in the dark. As they left the office hand in hand, the secretary shouted about the 4 o'clock meeting. Isabel responded without turning back that the meeting could wait. She had to go see the stars. 6 months later, Herrera Auto Shop had a new partner. Isabel had invested not for profit, but for passion. She had transformed the adjacent space into a multifunctional area. Half painting studio, half playroom for Lucy and the neighborhood kids. She hadn't completely abandoned her financial empire, but had delegated daily management to concentrate on projects that gave her true satisfaction. She had created a foundation to support small artisan businesses, financed art schools in working-class neighborhoods, and above all, had learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. One spring afternoon, while painting a sunset Lucy had asked her to capture forever, Carlos sat beside her in the small studio. He observed that who would have thought the richest woman in America would become so good at painting sunsets. Isabel responded, smiling that who would have thought a mechanic from Queens would manage to teach her what it means to be happy. Carlos told her he loved her. Not her money, not her position. He loved how Lucy made her laugh, how she got her hands dirty without embarrassment, how she had learned to see the stars even when everyone told her to look only at numbers. Isabel looked at him. This simple, honest man who had changed her life without asking anything in return. She had known the answer for months. They kissed while Lucy slept in the next room, and outside the window Manhattan shone with 1,000 lights. But for the first time in her life, Isabel didn't look at the city lights. She looked at the stars. A year later, they got married in a simple ceremony in the shop's courtyard. Isabel wore a white dress she had sewn herself with Lucy's help. Carlos wore the only good suit he had, and Lucy was the witness with a crown of fresh flowers. Joe from the diner brought coffee for everyone. Louise the baker made a 3-tier cake that tasted divine, and Mrs. Anna decorated everything with flowers from her stand. There were no photographers, no journalists, no important people, just the people who really mattered. During the ceremony, Lucy asked if she could say something. She stood on the chair and with the seriousness of an adult declared that now they were a real family. Papa had stopped making click-click in his chest. Isabel had learned to see the stars, and she had 2 parents who knew how to fix everything, even broken hearts. That night, while Lucy slept in her new room, Carlos and Isabel sat on the small terrace looking at the sky. Isabel had sold the penthouse, and the 3 of them had moved into a small house, but full of life, above the shop. Carlos asked her if she had any regrets. Just one, she responded. Not having met earlier a mechanic brave enough to tell her that table was his. Carlos laughed, reminding her that technically the table belonged to the restaurant. Isabel rested her head on his shoulder. Technically, he had saved her life that night. They looked at the stars in silence, and Isabel thought about how strange destiny was. She had gone out for a blind date and had found a family. She had lost thousands of millions in acquisitions and failed investments since she changed priorities, but had gained something that couldn't be quoted on the stock exchange. True love. Lucy, who actually wasn't sleeping but spying on them from the window, smiled and whispered to the brightest star that Papa was happy again. And now they also had Isabel, who knew how to see when it shone. They were a complete family. The star seemed to shine a little brighter, as if to say she approved. And in a small house above a shop in Queens, 3 people destiny had united through a misunderstanding and a little courage, continued living the most beautiful love story Manhattan had ever seen. That of a family who had chosen each other, one star at a time. Like if you believe true love can be born in the most unlikely encounters. Comment what moment of the story impacted you most. Share to inspire those who believe that simple people can teach complicated people what it means to be happy. Subscribe for more stories of authentic love, families who choose each other, and second chances. Sometimes all it takes is a brave mechanic to teach a billionaire what it means to be truly rich. Sometimes all it takes is an 8-year-old girl to show 2 adults how to look at the stars. And sometimes the greatest love is born when you stop looking for the perfect person and start loving the real person.